Hi, welcome to Friday Focus and Mental Health Matters. I'm Jane Smith.
And I'm Danielle.
And today is part 2 of the healing power of grief. And we have a beautiful guest on today, Hayley Yarish. We're really excited to have her here with us. Hayley is a master practitioner of clinical counseling, a life coach, and a grief guide. And she's a beautiful, heart-driven human being, and she's truly making a difference in the world. And I was honored to talk with her for the first time a little bit last night. And I was like, oh, she's just beautiful. So we're really excited to have you here. So welcome, Hayley.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Hayley. I can't say enough about how excited we are to have you. I think when we started looking at grief, and I haven't seen you in a couple of years, and you're somebody that when I think of loss and grief, your name comes up in my heart. And I know that you do this work with such compassion and care and absolute expertise. So welcome. Welcome to Friday Focus. And we are really looking forward to this conversation. And we encourage everyone that's out there to comment in the chat and share this particular video right now. Because right now I think all of us have discussed this right now under the pandemic. The world is in a lot of loss and grief, and probably more than ever that many of us have lived through. So Hayley, let's just start off, thinking about last week and putting this together. Then we'll talk a little bit about the pandemic, and then also let's end today with talking a bit about how do we help people, or how do you help people more likely. So last week we started our sessions, our 2-part series, and we talked about the 5 stages of grief. And I'm wondering from your lens. So it was Jane and I's, internet sleuthing lens and all the videos that we could gather and how we relate to our own loss. But from somebody who's an expert in the field, what are your thoughts about those 5 stages?
Yeah, so the 5 stages that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with were originally created for the dying. And as she witnessed people navigating or learning about terminal illness diagnosis, so how they coped with or came to understanding of what that would look like. And since then, they've been applied kind of widely to the grieving process. And in some ways, like you guys explained last week, you can see how that works for people. Or looking back, you can see how you might have found yourself in some of those stages along the way. The challenge with it is that some people feel like they're not grieving properly when they look at those stages, because grieving isn't a linear process. Those stages weren't meant to be a linear process, or like a process, step by step for grieving. And even though they can apply in some ways, I think that our grieving process is so individual. And when we try to put ourselves in, like, am I doing this? Am I doing this? Am I doing this? We can feel like we're doing it wrong. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think it was interesting for us to go through and learn about the steps. And so then I was really like, these steps are amazing. And I thought, wow, would this really help someone? And then I felt like, what is it like when you're really in the depth of that deep grief? Do you actually, do people actually go through those? Like, do you take people through the steps?
Yeah, like it's hard to recognize for a lot of people, like when you're angry, to say I'm angry, right? Or to recognize anger, and then to have this looming grief over you. I think what I'm hearing, like how is it to connect with a step or a process when it's such a intimate experience?
Yeah. Well, I think the grieving process is often like a whole person experience. Like, we're experiencing this mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and it's impacting us on so many different levels. And when we're in it, like when we're in the depths of it or in those early stages of grief, that conscious, like cognitive mind is more shut off. And we are just like in this feeling of the depths of our heartache. And to apply it to something that's so logical can be really difficult, Like we're just feeling like my heart is completely broken right now, or shattered, or my life has completely been flipped upside down. And now I can't eat and I can't do this. And there's just so many things going on, especially in those early stages, that to make it really like cognitive can be difficult. I think looking back, we can, like you guys were able to do last week, and like, oh, I see how that applies. I see how I could have gone through that. But in the moment, I think it can be really difficult to, make sense of even what's happened to us, never mind where we're at in a process.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a difference between, there is a big difference, obviously, but I always feel for people that have gone through loss, like, of course, but then I really feel for people that go through loss that's unexpected. I just feel like when someone loses someone suddenly, unexpectedly, is the grief harder in that case, or is it? It's. I feel like it would be, because it'd be so shocking. Like your brain would just be like, or.
Yeah. So, I mean, our grieving process is so complicated by so many things. And some of the things are how our person dies, our relationship with that person, all the things that come into play with that. And so there's grief that kind of follows the natural order of things, the natural order of life. And then there's grief that feels like it comes out of nowhere, which brings in some of those more traumatic feelings. So we would kind of call that traumatic grief. And being in that place, we have the grieving and we have the trauma, and now we have traumatic grief, and that's its whole other, that brings in a lot of other things as well.
And what comes up for me is right now with the pandemic, Hayley and Jane, like, wow, I mean, we talk about grief often as the loss of someone we love, or death. Yet under the pandemic right now, and surely 2.5 million people we've lost for sure. So that's an important acknowledgement. And also under the pandemic, Hayley, like there is all kinds of grief happening right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important thing to talk about, and something I always want to shed light on, that grief isn't just death. We don't just grieve when we lose somebody that we love. That's a big part of it. But there's so many other things. And right now, there's just this massive uncertainty and collective grief that I think we're all feeling in some way, shape, or form, or we know somebody who is. And it comes up in so many different ways. There's tons of ways that we can experience grief or loss in our life. The loss of normalcy, the loss of certainty, the loss of certain freedoms, certain things, certain events. Those things all impact us, and there's space for it. I think all of our grief is valid, and whether it's a death or it's you can't go to your best friend's wedding, those things hurt and they're hard.
I like what you said yesterday when we were talking about grief is, I don't know exactly how you said it, but you said grief is, our own grief is the hardest grief. Because can you talk about that a bit? It was our own grief is the hardest grief because it might be the worst thing we've ever gone through, or our biggest loss.
This is a quote you said, Hayley, that I'd heard before, but actually never it's taken literally. And I always thought, I don't understand that quote. So what was the quote again?
It's a David Kessler quote. He says, the worst loss is your loss. And so I think that really speaks to the fact that we often, in lots of ways in life, compare our process or our journey to somebody else's. And, we can't compare our loss. Just because this person has experienced a death doesn't minimize or take away the loss that you're experiencing in whatever way that it is, because it's yours and you feel it and you're the one experiencing that. It's your life that's changing, and there's so many different things that come into play with how that unfolds and how that impacts you moving forward. And so the worst loss is your loss, and your grief is valid regardless of what it is that you're experiencing and regardless of what somebody else in your world might be experiencing.
Wow. It's true.
Yeah.
It's just about not judging anyone else's loss or what they're going through, and not comparing. There's no comparison. It's all something that we have to work through, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with the pandemic as well, often or at times when we have had loss in the past and then we have current loss, our current loss can bring up our past loss, and we kind of feel it's like this string of loss that kind of gets pulled, and we start to look at all these other things that maybe we haven't fully processed, and maybe we thought we did, but it's coming up again, and things are starting to come out, and I think we don't talk about it enough. Sometimes we don't even know that it's grief that we're feeling, or that we have space in the grieving space if it's not death related. I hear that from a lot of people, whether they feel guilty that they don't want to take up space in the grieving space because they minimize what it is that they're going through, or that they're not even sure that it is grief because we don't talk about it enough. We grieve even when we're going through good things. Maybe, we have big life changes and there's parts of ourselves that we have to let go of in order to become, say we're becoming a mom, maybe we're grieving our single life when we had a lot of time for ourselves. Like there's a lot of different ways that it comes up that we overlook or that we minimize because, well, we're supposed to be grateful for this other thing. But it doesn't take away from this.
You know what? I just thought about when my husband and I lived in Edmonton for 30 years, and then we made this move to a beautiful, brand new house in Kelowna. So from Edmonton to Kelowna, left a life of 30 years. And until you said that, my brain was like, I actually did grieve through that because I gave it this whole life. And even though it was something wonderful, we're moving to a new city, I suffered for like a year. Went through like depression and I was lost. I never thought of it as grief though. So that would have been a form of grief.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think when we have this experience that's so wonderful and we've chosen it and we're excited about it, but there's also this other thing that's happening on the other side. We're leaving something behind. We're grieving our old life. We are moving on. We're changing. And I think I always say that there's space for both. Just because one thing's great doesn't make things go away on this side. We can be sad and happy. We can be grieving and be joyful. Like there's space for all of it in our human experience. And I think that's really important.
So important, Hayley, and also how we compare ourselves with others, right? So somebody that's been through a lot of loss or a lot of grief, and then, and from my experience, I've had friends say to me, like, it doesn't compare to what you've been through, or, or stuff like that. And I'm just like, that's my experience. And there's your experience. And, I think it's so important to think about that. And also about the joy, of like when we have joy in our life, it's almost like we have to sometimes give up. So something even as simple as grieving, our morning. Like I used to sleep in, now I'm getting up earlier and working out, like grieving those, slow parts. And maybe that doesn't seem like a lot to talk about. However, sometimes I reflect, I'm like, that was sure nice, right? So it's all these like, what I'm hearing you say is there's no measure. There's no measure of what grief is. And it's super individual.
Yeah.
So Hayley, what about, I'm sure you've come across this, but what about people that don't grieve? Like what happens, like say someone goes through something really traumatic and they actually are in denial. Do people do that? Actually just like, no, or will it come out later at some point? Does grief have to surface and you have to heal?
Yeah, I would say likely it'll come out at some point. I mean, any kind of experience that we have, maybe we're not ready to deal with it. Maybe we don't know how. Maybe we don't have the space or the skills to do so. I mean, I had somebody speaking to me, a while back, and they had somebody come back into their mind, and it had been years since they had lost this person, and just now, over 10 years later, they're feeling ready to confront that loss and to look at that. And so you can't do it wrong. It's your own process. But something that's really important, I think, is that in order for grief to be it's somebody else's quote, and I can't think of who it is right now, but in order for grief to be healed, it needs to be witnessed. And when we just push it down and suppress it and do all the things that we do keep going in life, it's hangs out somewhere, and it might kind of manifest in a physical symptom or some other way. And it might not come out until we experience another loss. And I think that this pandemic and everything that everyone's experiencing right now might be bringing some of that stuff up, that stuff that maybe we haven't looked at before. We're sitting with ourselves. We're alone a lot. We're kind of spending a lot of time in that introspective place, potentially.
Fear. Right?
Yeah.
I think having, there's this looming fear, like, are we going to be okay? Are we going to get to hug our mom again? Are we going to ever travel? Or, when I think about dealing with grief and denial, I just wonder so much about a person's capacity at the time, like the overload of pain that some people live with. And when, they're in denial, then that's a real survival mechanism of our heart. Like, it's our heart and our mind saying, we need to wait this out right now. And although I agree, suppression can be super healthy for us, at the same time, surviving is more important sometimes. Even although it might be a rough life in denial, survival becomes key. So.
Yeah, we all need different things at different points in time. And sometimes after a loss happens, we don't have the space. We have to deal with other things. I know when my dad died, I didn't have space to just like be in it. I had to deal with this, that, and the other thing, and all the unfolding of the logistical stuff. And then, then we're told to keep busy, to get back to things, get back to business, to do all the things. And it wasn't till I actually got injured at work that things slowed down for me, and then I had to sit in it. But it wasn't until that, like, it keep busy, the things that we hear people say, we don't always actually have the time. We might not have the time to slow down enough to.
That's the first stage. Well, they say the first stage of grief, I think, is denial or shock. People must be in that a little bit, denial and shock at the beginning, and then you are busy and you're to plan funerals and you have family all around you, and you're getting through the day, but then all of a sudden, how many weeks later people get on with their lives and you're left. I always think about that because it is overwhelming at first. There's a lot to do when someone passes away, and but you're surrounded by people. So then when you go back to everyone's gone on to their life, I feel like, oh, what is that? How is that person doing now after 3 weeks or a month?
Yeah, I always feel like when I reflect on the death that I've experienced and the loss that I've experienced, it feels like, your whole world stops in an instant. Everything changes. And you have, like you said, you have that gathering, that support, the people coming together. And then once that goes away, after those kind of first couple of weeks, everyone goes back to normal. Life goes back to normal. And you're like sitting here like, what am I supposed to, like, what is life even? And we spend I personally spent a lot of time, what's important? What even matters? Like, what's the purpose of it all? And like having some really big questions. And then I often explain it like that, like when you think about double dutch, like that skipping rope game, like I felt like I was like, how do I jump back into life? How do I find my place in the world now that this massive loss has happened and has changed, honestly, everything for me? And I think that can be a lot of people's experience of like, everything has changed for me, but looking around, everything else seems, back to normal.
Yeah, and I think it'd be so hard for someone because I have lost people in my life, but not really close like I have. So I feel like your brain must be like, is everyone's actually getting up and brushing their teeth and doing all these things that they think are important, and my whole world is upside down? Like, I just would, and I have walked through grief with a really close friend, so I understand it, but I know I don't understand it to the degree of what she actually felt, her actual pain.
I think it's a buckling. Like, that's what I always think about my own experience. Like, your knees literally fall out from underneath you. And like, I just remember, when I lost my grandfather, who was so close to me, and I'm sorry for your loss, Hayley, and your dad. Like, that's big. And I just remember the day was rainy and I took a walk around the block, and I was walking and my knees literally buckled. Like, I literally fell to the ground and just cried. And it rained. Like, it was just, like, or when, a situation happened in my marriage where, there was so much loss, like it was like this awakening, this moment, buckle, so that's how my body like physically just fell to the ground, and then recognizing what you said, I think was really profound, is you see the world around you normal. And like, how do you fit back into that when your whole perspective on being is different?
Yeah.
Like, being is different. So
yeah. And with all those losses, there's like those secondary losses, right? Loss of identity, loss of, your person, loss of meaning, loss of, lots of different things. Our beliefs, our values, like all those things change, and we change. Like who I was before loss is different. And I also have to grieve that I'm not that person anymore. And I'm grateful for who I am now, but that doesn't mean that there's parts of myself, that the innocence or the whatever that was there before I experienced the things that I have. That's hard too. And yeah.
Well, you actually have lost not just that person in your life, you lost the future, how you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like
that's
if you lose a spouse, you've got this plan in your mind that you will be together until 90s, in your 90s or whatever, and all of a sudden your future has changed. So I think that even our brains readjusting to a new way of life, new habits, new so
that's so important, right? Like recognizing like just the insurmountable reality of grief. It is unavoidable. It is absolute. It is absolutely heart-wrenching and bombarding and overwhelming. And I mean, it's as true as life itself, no matter what we do about it. So I guess I wonder, and having you here, it would, we'd be missing out, Hayley, if we could talk more about how do we help people? Like, what can we do? Like, what are some of the things you, as an expert, what advice can you give us all?
To help people through the grieving process, because sometimes we don't know what to say, we don't know what to do, and even going through it ourselves is difficult. But then there's so many people that you're like, how do I help this person? Like, what is something we could do to?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think it's so important because we don't get taught these things. We don't get taught how to. We don't even talk about grief, never mind taught how to navigate it and how to deal with it. And so I think one of the biggest things is learning how to hold space for people in their pain, in their heartache, in the depths of it, and not trying to change that, not trying to bypass it, not trying to make it better, not trying to fix it. I think when we see people we love in pain, we often want to fix it. We want to help them. We want to like offer, a silver lining and things like that. But those things often don't feel good in the moment. And when we can learn how to hold space and learn to just sit with people and allow them to have their experience, and whatever it is, whatever emotion it is, the ups and the downs of it, I think that is such a gift to be able to just be. And that gives that other person permission to just be as they are, not having to be different, not having to feel something other than what they do.
Wow. I think too often we try to say too much because we want to help them. Like you say, we don't want them to suffer. And then, so like just being there as a person present with them and letting them feel what they need to feel is powerful.
Yeah.
Courageous.
Yeah.
Like, because what comes up for me there is just seeing somebody you love grieve, or in pain, and you want to save them. You want to save them. Like, so you start, well, at least this, or at least you have that, or, it's going to get better over time. Don't worry, just get back to it. It's, or whatever we might say, or how our body language looks to kind of push people through all of that. It takes a lot of courage. And I wonder, Hayley, what advice, how can you hold space? Like, how do you do that? Like, what does it look like? Or what do I do with my body?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone needs something a little bit different for sure. And we were talking yesterday, some people navigate grief using humor, and some people navigate it through crying a lot, and some people, everyone does it differently, and none of it is wrong. All of it is perfect. All of it needs to be what it is in the moment. And I think for us, like as people supporting people who are grieving, is not trying to make it better, is just being with them. You can have a normal conversation, you can ask them about their person, you can tell stories, you can say their name. Like, that's okay to say somebody's name. I think we avoid these things because we don't know what to say. But some of those things, I think, just kind of like an overview, like of trying to make it better, often doesn't. Offering an at least ... is like, that's kind of like that both and, like, yes, I have that, but that still doesn't take away this pain. And yes, I can be grateful for whatever the on the other side of the at least is, but this pain right now is so real, and that's what's most present. And so let's just honor what is.
I feel like, okay, I'm really into gratitude right now, and how the power of gratitude. And I've read a lot and listened to a lot, and I just believe in it so much. And I feel like if someone was in this deep grief, and this is what I've read, and I now I'm thinking, I don't know. This is like gratitude is like a flashlight in a dark forest. So I thought if someone is in grief and they're in this dark place, if they could just find one thing to be grateful for, like that they have sight, or they have, they can shower that morning, or they have a just one thing. But now I feel like if you said that to someone in deep grief, just find one thing you're grateful for, I'm sure they would just, I don't think they would want to hear that.
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, gratitude is so important, right?
That's where they would just want you to be like, you know what? I'm here with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to reflect on those things. And I think it's really important because these things that we read, they don't just apply like across the board, straight across all the time. It could be helpful maybe at some point, but it's not always helpful right in the moment. If you're in the depths of it, like saying like, this is so shitty and like, this sucks and this is like the worst. Like, I feel like that can sometimes be more helpful than saying like, but what are you grateful for? Like, my life is like in shambles. And so to focus on, and gratitude is wonderful. And, but there's a time and a place for those things. And sometimes we're just not ready for it. Sometimes we're not in a place.
Hayley, and what I'm hearing is something you mentioned last night that came up was just the two words, right now. Right? When we start talking about like being positive about our future, or, when it comes to grief, I like being and holding space is about right now.
Yeah.
It's about in the moment. It's about present, like seeing somebody else and witnessing and observing them. Like you said, the word witnessing, and I always think about that. And, like, how are we observing those we love, and how does it look like? How do they look right now? And how honored are we to be able to sit in this space with somebody who is experiencing such a profound time in their life? Right now is what matters most. And I'm hearing that, and I'm going to keep that in mind. That space right now.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to even describe like holding space. It's just like being right here and then now. We're not trying to make it better. We're not trying to look forward. We're not trying to like go anywhere other than right now, and whatever it is happening or coming up and out in the moment. It might be different in 10 minutes, but we need to have space to let it out now, to honor how we feel, to honor our loss, to honor whatever it is, so that eventually we can go into the direction of moving forward.
Maybe that's where the gratitude comes into all this. Hey, Jane is thinking about like how grateful we can be just to be right now with this person, or be with ourselves and recognize and see.
I just remember with my girlfriend that really went through a really tough time, and it's been 3 years since her sister passed away. My best friend, it was just, I remember, because really getting into gratitude, and I think it was a couple years after her sister, beautiful Jill, had passed away, I was talking to her about gratitude, and I remember her saying on the phone to me, I'm trying to be grateful. And I was like, it's just not that simple.
Yeah.
It's right. And I mean, it's Yeah, so it's a process, and I think letting people grieve forever. You don't ever get over someone. You won't, like, right? You don't get over them. You live. Your life is different, and you want to celebrate their life, and like that whole having meaning on someone's life, like putting meaning on it in some way, I think would be healing. But it's not like it ends, right? When you lose someone, you hold them in your heart forever, like you and your dad is with you. And I like, I talked to Pastor Neil about grief, and he said that a beautiful thing is taking what you loved most about the person that passed away and living it. If they were really kind, or generous, compassionate, or if they were really funny or saw the funny side, like bring that side of them and live it, because that's honoring them. And I loved that.
I love that you brought love into this, Jane, because really, is that grief really, is it just, all in the last 2 weeks, what we've been looking at, all comes down to holding space for the love. I mean, and honoring that love and finding ways of keeping that light up and light going, because the pain of that light going out is just unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hayley, you're amazing.
Oh, thank you. You guys are as well.
Yeah, so if people want to reach Hayley, she has a beautiful website, because you counsel people through grief. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, so all forms of grief. I always want to say that, not just death, but also, if you're grieving anything. And I think right now that's huge for a lot of people, and just having space to say that out loud, because we don't always have that, and to have space to talk about what it is that weighs heavy on our hearts.
And Hayley, do you offer like online services? So how can
Yeah, you can book directly through my website. I offer free 30-minute consultations to make sure it feels like a good fit. And then we can work together. And if not, I'm happy to send you in the direction of somebody else who might be a better fit.
Amazing.
Aw, that's amazing.
I'm so grateful that you're here.
Thank you guys so much.
I am too. It's been amazing.
Yes.
Thank you. And everybody out there that's watching this stream, please share it with the world, and remember to hold space. Leave a comment, go visit Hayley's website, and let's take care of each other.
Yeah. Be gentle with yourselves.
Be gentle with yourselves. Yes, for sure. We love ourselves. Okay, thank you everyone for watching. Thanks, Hayley. Danielle.
Bye.
Jane.
Bye.
Bye.